Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Guys, if you've not done so already, please give us a like and a follow and a share. Really helps me out when you do that. Guys, I'm going to give you a rundown of what's been happening in the world with regards to, flashpoints, World War III, the latest, whatever frame you want to put that in. I want to concentrate though at the end of the video on naval warfare, asymmetric naval warfare. Nobody's talking about this at the moment, and everybody's looking at the Chinese and the Russian Navy and saying, oh, they're terrible, and they are. But guys, I do not think that NATO, I do not think that the United States would have the upper hand in a naval conflict, if it came to it, and I'll talk about the reasons why and the new technology that's been developed that I think is going to make conventional warships kind of obsolete. So we're going to be talking about, I'm going to talk about the latest in Poland, Somalia, Africa. We're going to touch on the Trump shooting. We're going to talk about Antarctica and the Falklands. So guys, let's just begin. So Poland, Poland have made a bilateral security agreement with Ukraine. The most notable thing I think on there is the potential or the concept of the Polish Air Force shooting down missiles over Ukraine. Now, I think, and on the surface of it, it sounds reasonable. That should happen, and it should. But where I think this is going, I think this is laying the seeds for Ukrainian F-16s to be flown from Polish airfields. Because guys, and I've said this so many times before, if these aircraft haven't got transponders on, how's anybody going to know whether it's a Polish F-16 going on a defensive mission or a Ukrainian F-16 going on an offensive mission? Because the lines are very blurred. So like I've said this many times, I don't think the F-16s are ever going to be flown from Ukraine. I think they're always going to be flown from Poland, and these are just these steps moving towards it. On the border in Poland, the government, they've authorised lethal force. I don't know how that's a thing, because I thought if you had a rifle, you're always authorised for lethal force. But I think they've lowered the rules of engagement. This comes after migrants have been throwing spears, and guys, I'll put links in the description. But if you look at these spears, guys, they're absolutely brutal. They're literally just sticks with knives sellotaped onto them, and guys, it's absolutely wild what's going on the Poland-Belarus border. Poland is spending they've announced they're going to be spending 5% GDP on defence. That is absolutely huge. It blows everyone else out of the water. What you're seeing is you're seeing NATO become more obsolete, and you're seeing this Eastern Shield. I called them, like a few months back, I named the countries and I called them the Fellowship. But I think they've got an official name now, and I think it's called the Eastern Shield. So you've got Poland, Finland, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. So they're the guys who have a border with Russia. Some of them have a border with Belarus. Now, all these countries are tightening together, and they're sharing resources, they're sharing manpower, intelligence, and they're going to be I think they're going to become the new NATO, because I've said it in a few videos now. I feel NATO is becoming obsolete, and I don't see a way forwards for NATO with the way it is, the way it's structured, because the wording doesn't really provide any reliability, and it doesn't provide any teeth. So Somalia is one that nobody's talking about. I feel there's been an increase in violence in Somalia. Yesterday there was a car bomb, the day before there was a shooting, and I think the car bomb, there was 20 dead. I think in the shooting there was 8 dead, so there's a huge, there's an increase in violence in Somalia. Let's not forget that Somalia it's got relatively large oil reserves, like 30 billion barrels. Could there be an intervention? Could there be peacekeeping missions going in there to stabilise the country? I don't know. The West tried that before, didn't really work out too well, but it's one to watch, because I feel that could, in the next coming months, it could flare up, and there could be some sort of humanitarian crisis out there. Then there has to be boots on the ground, there has to be troops, and and that could be a move forwards. The Democratic Republic of Congo, which is not democratic and it's not a republic, the Russian influence out there is getting huge, guys. Right? I've got a lot of friends who work in DRC, and the Chinese companies that are moving out there using Wagner Security, you know, they're expanding this sphere of influence because of the natural resources in DRC. So you've got diamonds, gold, copper, lithium, cobalt. I'm sure there's some other stuff, but you know, the cobalt and the lithium are the key things there when you're talking about electric. Well, you're talking about solar panels, electric cars, batteries, all this green stuff. You know, you kind of need to control those raw materials. Also, you know, if you're looking at a larger scale war, you need to control as much natural resources and as much mineral content as you can. Because what you've seen, and what we've seen in Eastern Europe, is these wars, they just turn into a slogging match between who can provide most artillery. And, you know, so all the smart munitions are gone now. There's none, well, I'm sure there is a few, but, you know, there's a negligible amount of smart munitions in Eastern Europe. What they're using is old-fashioned artillery that's about 100 years, you know, the technology is about 100 years old. Yes, there's more sophisticated barrels, more sophisticated targeting systems, but, you know, it's an artillery war, it really is. And whoever can produce the most artillery quickest, you know, they're the ones who are going to have the upper hand. So that's why I feel Russia and China are moving in there, because they want to control those resources. Guys, I hate to keep harping on about it, but the Falklands and Antarctica, the amount of oil down there, guys, honestly, it is absolutely huge. The oil reserves in British Antarctic territory are twice as big as Saudi Arabia's oil. You're almost twice as big as the as the reserves in Saudi Arabia. Guys, if you're British, just consider that for one moment. If Britain had the same amount of oil as Saudi Arabia, you know, how good, you know, hopefully you'd like to think that Britain could be made a lot better if we had a lot more money, because the cost of living at the moment is absolutely destroying us here in the UK. It seems like every couple of days there's an increase in food, every couple of days there's an increase in fuel. Everything just seems to be getting more and more expensive, and people are becoming sadder and sadder and sadder, you know. So I really do feel this should be plastered all over the, you know, mainstream media in the UK, but it's not. If you don't know, whoever controls the Falkland Islands controls Antarctica. I'm not going to go into it in depth, guys. I've done it to death. But what I will say, the Argentinians, they, you know, who border who are the closest country to the Falklands, Argentina also claims sovereignty over the Falkland Islands. Excuse me. Now, you've got to look where people are spending their money. You know, if you look at nothing else, look where there's money to go in. It doesn't matter what they're saying. Look what they're spending their money on. You know, Argentina, they're buying F-16s. You know, why do they need F-16s? They don't have any enemies in the region. You know, they're also buying amphibious landing craft. Why are they buying amphibious landing craft, guys? You know, it doesn't make any sense. What I think is going to happen in the relatively near future, I think there's going to be some sort of, agreement with Argentina, with Russia. I think Argentina may join the BRICS alliance, or there's going to be some sort of shift that way, because Vladimir Putin's already said that he would consider arming NATO's adversaries, NATO's enemies, you know, and then that would make a perfect fit. Why? Argentina would get all the weapons. We already know from my previous videos that Russia has a dark fleet of oil tankers, oil transport capacity. You know, in this context, Russia could sponsor Argentina to attack to attack the Falklands. Whatever happens in the Falklands, you know, whoever wins, Russia can then move in with its oil drilling capacity and get that oil. That's why Britain, whatever happens, has to defend the Falkland Islands. They have to defend that oil, guys. Just because, you know, because of the money, you know, Britain has to defend that. With the Trump shooting, you know, it's been all over the news. It's been all over the media, guys. It's been absolutely done to death. What I want to kind of give you guys is not an alternate meaning to it, or some sort of, you know, I don't want to say, oh, the snipers should have been doing better, you know, the police should have reacted quicker. I've done a few videos on that, and my thoughts are still the same. I want to see what kind of optic this shooter was using, because once that comes out, guys, I will do another video. But what you can pretty much guarantee now is Trump, the United States, are going to pull their funding from Ukraine. That's all they can do to stop this war. That's kind of all they can do, guys, all right? So they've already said it, the United States, generals and whoever it is, you know, they've all come out and they said, listen, guys, you know, we don't want to break our spear in Ukraine when there's other threats, particularly China, Iran, maybe even Somalia, they might be popping up. If you contextualize that, Russia is now combat ineffective. Russia can't do anything. They're bogged down in Ukraine. Russia can't fight, or, you know, can't open up a second, a second front, for better words to say. You know, so in one context, America, they've done their job. They've made Russia combat ineffective. So now, you know, China, Iran, Somalia, potentially Somalia, you know, they're the places that they're looking at, and that's what's going to happen. You know, you're going to get this Eastern Shield bloc, this Eastern Shield alliance. That's going to grow stronger. I feel NATO's over. I feel the United States is going to make another allied group with potentially Australia, New Zealand. Who else have we got? South Korea. You know, people in that region, like an Indo-Pacific alliance, and they're going to look forward to, not look forward, but they're going to look and concentrate and deal with any threat that comes from that region of the world. Excuse me. So at the beginning of this video, guys, I talked about, you know, how I don't feel that the United States Navy and NATO, the NATO naval warfare system, how they're set up, I don't feel it's as strong as we think, although it is. Now, when you compare side by side for example, let's forget NATO. Let's just use the United States Navy because it's huge. You know, the US Navy, it's huge. It's the strongest. It's the most powerful. It's got the most sophisticated equipment. It's got the fastest ships, the best trained sailors and sailorettes, whatever you want to call them. But that's not going to matter. Why? Well, have you ever wondered why Russia isn't spending much money, or, well, they don't appear to be spending much money on their navy, and their navy looks really, really old. Their ships are breaking down every 2 minutes. Well, I don't think Russia, I don't think China, I don't think our adversaries intend to fight us at sea in a conventional manner. So let's just switch theatres a moment, and let's look at the lessons that we learned from 20 years in Afghanistan and, you know, and the conflicts in Iraq. It's very difficult to fight an unseen enemy. So when a small force is taking on a big force, they have to use asymmetric warfare, unconventional warfare, guerrilla warfare, whatever you want to call it, non-conventional. I think I've said that. You know, so basically you're using things like snipes, you're using things like IEDs, you're using things like small unit ambushers. You're wearing civilian clothes so you can blend into the civilian population, and these things become very difficult to counter, almost impossible. You know, certainly what we've seen in Afghanistan, it becomes almost impossible to counter this. Now, let me just read you an article from 2010. Where are we? Yeah. A new cruise missile system being marketed by a Russian firm is attracting attention as a weapon that could, according to its promotional video, transform ordinary civilian freight vehicles into long-range missile launchers. The weapon, known as Club K Container Missile System, has been promoted on the internet and at international arms fairs by the Moscow-based defence firm. I'm not going to try and pronounce that word. The state-controlled firm's marketing campaign describes concealed and highly mobile satellite-guided systems that could be hidden inside an ordinary cargo container, making it indistinguishable from other freight containers on trains, trucks or cargo ships. So guys, can you imagine how terrifying that would be? Now, if you think about that, guys, about the asymmetry of that, you know, how close can these civilian cargo ships get to our shores? A civilian, I mean, probably the captain of the ship itself doesn't know what's on its cargo, so he's no idea. And if this ship's in international waters, and I'm just making this up, guys, but let's just say for argument's sake, it leaves China. It's slow. It's with all the other cargo ships. It's doing all the other drops. It's dropping off all the other cargo. But one of these, on the top somewhere, at the back, out the way, you know, they know it's going to be off last, or they know it's not going to be, nobody's going to take it down, gets all the way to the shores of the United Kingdom somewhere, and it's just off the shore. How close can that get, you know, before anybody intercepts it? Imagine if you were trying to bring a Russian warship that close to the shores of said country. It wouldn't get there, it'd be intercepted, they wouldn't let it in. But civilian cargo ships, these things can come all the way in, nice and slow, nice and easy. And on the back, they've got huge payloads of, you know, GPS guided missiles. You know, these ships could come up, surround the UK, for example, and then they could all, you know, initiate some sort of attack. If this happens, it becomes very difficult for these big, strong navies to be able to respond, because what are you going to do? You're going to sink every shipping container? No, of course not. It's going to be a nightmare. You're going to have the same problems that we had in Afghanistan, in Iraq, but you're just going to have them on the water. Because, you know, when I used to work in this space, I always used to say to people, right, okay, do you want the best, most fantastic ships, or do you want to protect the land? And I used to say this with aircraft as well. I said, right, do you want the best, most fantastic drones, or do you want effective drones? Because there's two different things, you know, and you know, Western governments are very good at spending money on very advanced technology. Now, what are you spending money for? Are you spending money because you want to advance technology, or are you spending money because you want to win wars? And I feel in the West, that's kind of what we do at the moment. We put money into our military-industrial complex, and it doesn't provide war-winning stuff. It kind of just provides, you know, science stuff and creates technology and funds people. So that's the way I think we're going, guys, with the naval warfare. And I don't really see that the West doesn't really have the West doesn't have an answer to this. Like, you know, the West doesn't have an answer to these small, cheap drones that we've seen used in Ukraine. You know, these small, cheap drones are like $500 or something, and they're taking out tanks. They're taking out £1 million tanks, and we don't really have an answer for them in the West, because they're so cheap, because they're so easily available. They're disposable. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work. You know, you can get another one. It's relatively cheap. I saw an article the other day. I don't think I'll be able to find it, but it was from some Ukrainians who were out in the front line, and they've estimated and kind of they had some maths behind it, but they're saying it costs the Ukrainians $1,000 for every Russian soldier that they take out. Now, guys, that is like, when you quantify it like that, you know, it really makes life seem cheap. But that's the way these things are going, and I think that we're going to have this problem on the seas, on the oceans. Asymmetric warfare, nobody's talking about it, nobody's even considering it at the moment. But I did find another article from the United States. I'll put this in the description below, guys, from the Defense Post. So the article I read you previously about the Russian system, I can't find much on it now. That was an article from 2010, so I've no doubt that these things will have been in development, they'll be made, and they'll be kept secret, and people will just be waiting to use them. But Lockheed Martin are working on a similar system. The exercise demonstrated the modularity and lethality of littoral combat ships, and the ability to successfully integrate containerized weapon systems to engage a surface target. The exercise will inform continued testing, evaluation and integration of containerized weapon systems on afloat platforms. Now, I've read that, guys, because it was very interesting how they used afloat platforms. You know, I think everybody's understanding now that the naval warfare of we've got this many ships, you've got that many ships. You know, I think everybody understands now that's over. The main threat is going to come from civilian cargo ships where, you know, we don't know if they have got weapons on them or not, and they become very difficult to identify, very difficult to eliminate, and very difficult to deal with in themselves. So, guys, that's it. That's my recap. I'm going to give you more on. I'm going to give you some more tomorrow, but for now, I'm going to mag to grid.